Julie Simmons. Welcome to Quantum Astrology. Today we're going to talk about eclipses because I got a wonderful email from a person who asked me if I would talk to her about eclipses because her birthday is on an eclipse. So there is an eclipse coming up at the end of this month, so I thought it would be a good time to talk about them. So imagine that you live in prehistoric times and that you are among the earliest humans ever to walk the earth. And there you are out hunting and gathering and doing whatever you do, and it's daytime and the birds are tweeting and the forest around you is scurrying, and suddenly it starts to go dark like it's nighttime, but it's really the middle of the day. And the birds start to go into the trees like they're going to sleep, and everything, that hush of evening falls, and one of your troop looks up at the sky and sees the sun disappearing and then goes blind, right? This is the first eclipse. So you can imagine that it's so it would have been such an unnatural thing. What you're used to is that the sun rises, it stays up all day, it goes down. That's your life. So the sun rises, it stays up, and then it turns night in the middle of the day. So this is really where eclipses get their reputation for being so bad and so scary, because they're so unnatural, or at least that's how it seemed for hundreds of thousands of years. So you could also imagine that you're walking at night. You know, back in those prehistoric days, you wouldn't have gone out at night much because you would have gotten eaten. But on a night when the moon was full, you could go out and take a long walk because you can see almost as well as if the sun is out when the moon is full. So, and remember, there's no light pollution back then. There's only the sun and the moon in the sky for light. So there you are, you're out at night, maybe you're hunting, and suddenly the moon begins to disappear. It begins to look like it's being eaten, and it starts to turn red. You know, so there's this reddish, it disappears, but it's there only in this reddish, with this reddish hue over it, but it becomes dark. So same thing, it might take 2 hours for that to happen, but there you are, the moon was in the sky, it was a full moon, just like always, and suddenly gone. And then something, whatever ate it, spits it back out, and it comes back. So this is the nature of eclipses, right? They're scary. And, you know, when you add to it the fact that you go blind if you look at an eclipse, you know, so it's like being struck by the God. It's like being struck, it's being struck by God. You cannot look upon the face of God and live, right? Because you'll go blind, because it's the sun. So there's a great story about Columbus when he and his sailors got stranded in Jamaica in 15-something or other. And it was fine at the beginning, but then the Jamaicans got tired of feeding them because they weren't going anywhere. And so Columbus managed the situation with his trusty almanac, because in Europe at that time, they knew when eclipses were going to happen. So he said to them, if you don't feed us, you will be in deep trouble. You know, God will speak to you. And so they didn't believe him. And wouldn't you know, just when he predicted, the sun disappeared. Wasn't that convenient? So the native people freaked out and believed that they were being, you know, endangered by powers above. And then Columbus said, well, I'm going to go into my tent and I'm going to pray and ask, you know, God to restore the light to the sky, but you better feed us. And of course they did. And of course it worked, because even though they had seen an eclipse before in their history, I'm sure, they were never able to predict them, right? So somebody who had the power to predict an eclipse, that's power. So this is, you know, eclipses in 2 minutes or less down through the ages. So eclipses have come into our time with this sense of negative portent. But of course for us, they're not unpredictable, and we know to wear eclipse glasses, and we know exactly when they're going to happen, and exactly where they're going to happen, and exactly what minute they're going to happen. So things have changed a bit with eclipses over the years. Just so you have a sense of how they happen, there's the sun, and there's the earth, and there's the moon. So there are 3 big round balls in the heavens, and more or less the sun and the moon and the earth are in a line, but it's not always exact. Like the sun can be here, the earth can be here, the moon can be here. So this line between the 3 big balls is why we have new moons and full moons, because when the sun and the earth and the moon are in that kind of relationship, then the light of the sun shines on the moon and we have a full moon. But when the sun and the moon are together and the earth is over here, then the moon disappears and we can't see, there is no moon, and that's a new moon. So basically that's how new moons and full moons work, and eclipses work, because every once in a while, twice a year in fact, there's an eclipse season where we have eclipses. The sun and the moon and the earth are in a line that's equal, right? And so the light of the shadow, either the shadow of the earth blocks out the moon, or the sun gets blocked out. I have to work this out. Sorry. So what's really bizarre and amazing about eclipses is that the sun is 400 times bigger than the moon, and the sun is 400 times farther away from the earth than the moon. So the moon is close enough to us to exactly cover the disk of the sun when there's an eclipse of the sun, right? So the earth is here, the moon is here, the sun is here, and the sun disappears because of the shadow of the moon. When it's the other way around, it's still the same idea, though. The light, the earth blocks out the light of the sun. So we have this amazing thing, because actually astronomers know that the moon is moving away from the earth very, very small amounts every year. So eventually the moon will be far enough away from the earth so we won't have total eclipses, because they won't be so close. Someone once said to me that maybe it's just, eclipses are just for humans, just like while humans walk the earth there will be eclipses, and once the moon gets too far away from the earth there won't be eclipses anymore. I don't know about that. But you know, it's a very interesting thing that we have eclipses and that they are exact. So so I think that as an astrologer who takes my meaning from the appearance of the sky, I think that eclipses have become less portentous than they were once. I don't think they're as, they don't suggest to me that terrible things are going to happen. I mean, terrible things happen, but I haven't found them to be exactly in line with eclipses. Although there are astrologers who will tell you that eclipses tell you the whole story. So I'm not saying I'm right or I'm wrong, but just so you understand how that works. So basically, when we have a solar eclipse, that means that the sun disappears. And solar eclipses are always at the new moon. And lunar eclipses, when the moon disappears, are always at the full moon. The meaning of the astrological meaning of the eclipse is going to come from the sign that the eclipse is in. And if you're looking for what it's going to mean for you, then you'd have to know where that falls in your chart. But if you have an eclipse on your birthday, so anything that happens on your birthday stays with you for the year, right? Other things happen, they come and they go, but if it's happening on your birthday, you own it for that year. So if you have a solar eclipse on your birthday, like the one that's coming up at the end of April, that eclipse suggests that you will be starting new things, because new moons are always about starting new things. So it's a year of starting new things, but the eclipse puts an edge on it. So it means that you're not just starting new things because you're picking them up and it's easy to find them. You're starting new things because you're getting clobbered a little with having to start new things. So an eclipse on your birthday would mean it's time to initiate change and to be open to whatever the change is that lies ahead. So if you have a lunar eclipse on your birthday, full moons are different than new moons. New moons are about new beginnings. Full moons are about taking the measure of the life that you're living. So if there's a full moon on your birthday, any full moon, it means that that's going to be a year where you really see the measure of the life that you've created. You really have to deal with and look at your life as you've made it happen. If there's an eclipse on your birthday of the moon, there's an edge to it, right? The eclipses definitely put an edge on a new or a full moon. And the edge would be that you're looking at the life that you've created, and boy, what you don't like in that picture that you see, you better pick it up and do something about it, not just survey the landscape. So that's what I think about eclipses. I know that people who do stock market predictions with astrology use eclipses quite strongly and quite effectively. I don't do that exactly, but I'm sure that it works. I never doubt that anything works. Anyway, that's what I know about eclipses, and I hope it's useful to you, and happy birthday if you have an eclipse on your sun for sure. Bye.